My name is Devin.
And I am Jonathan, and we thank you for joining us today for the inaugural episode of the Freedom Report.
A new podcast dedicated to tracking the policies and intentions of the incoming Trump administration and other political players, happenings, and organizations that will shape the future of our nation.
In today's episode, we will be establishing a baseline of certain economic markers that are commonly used to assess the state of the country's economy during the term of a president.
We will track these changes throughout the upcoming Trump presidency in order to see if Trump is delivering on his promises to fix the Biden Harris economy, which he claims that the previous administration destroyed.
The economic markers that we will be using to track the overall health of the economy are the GDP, or the gross domestic product, which is the total value of goods and services produced by an individual country, and of course, changes in the rate of unemployment as well as inflation.
We will also monitor changes in the budget deficit and national debt, as well as the stock market performance, poverty rates, the Consumer Price Index, or CIP, and the balance of trade, or trade deficit, which shows the difference between the value of a country's imports and exports.
I'm sure this sounds like a lot of numbers, but we wanted to make sure this is brought into focus as we navigate the next 4 years of Trump's presidency. As of course we all know, this was one of the largest focuses of his campaign.
Today, we will also take a look back over the last 4 years of the Biden administration in order to chronicle the current state of the nation prior to the inauguration of Donald Trump.
And just as a little foreshadowing here, our next episode will begin our deep dive into Trump's Agenda 47. This is sort of his beginning plan for his term, at least as far as the public has been made aware, and is part of the official Republican platform for 2024. We will also be taking a detailed look at all of Trump's appointees to the cabinet as well as senior staff and discussing their backgrounds and credentials. So, taking a look at where we are today, looking at a Trump presidency, second Trump presidency, and what exactly brought us here? I think that
I think that's a question that a lot of us have been asking ourselves since the results came in.
And one of the main reasons people gave for voting for Trump was, of course, the economy.
Yes, we heard that a lot from pretty much all of the news outlets throughout the campaigns.
And it didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people because it seemed that the media was confused when they would talk about this issue because the mainstream media and others focused on things like the October Economist article calling the United States economy the envy of the world.
Yes, they focused on that a lot.
And right, and for most of us, we're sitting here watching these news broadcasts and we're thinking, why don't they get it? What is it that is so hard for them to understand? We're not in a bad mood economically just because we woke up on the wrong side of the bed. We're in a bad mood with regards to the economy because we can't afford a bed.
Right. And this is something particularly important to our household. If you haven't already guessed, we were Harris supporters and Biden supporters before that. But it was, we enjoyed seeing the good numbers and good news for the Biden Harris administration and then eventually the Harris campaign. But we can attest, being a married couple, that our household did not see the reality of these figures that were being presented to us.
Yes, I would hardly call our economic situation over the past 4 years the envy of anyone. And quite the opposite, actually. But that's true for so many people, people we know, and many of you out there. Hopefully, there will eventually be many
Many
uh,
listeners.
who listen to us as we share, this journey. But I think that when the real people of this country are struggling with paying their grocery bills and paying for car repairs and childcare and all of the other things that come up in the course of a month, the state of the stock market is not really all that important to them. How well the billionaire class is doing is just, it's not really at the forefront when you're trying to pick which bill you're going to pay in full this month.
Right. And while great stock market numbers might translate to a good bump in your 401k, we all know that the stock market is volatile and is usually probably going to balance out at the end. So, like Jonathan said, the people who are going to see the most benefit from these stock market numbers are going to be the people at the top.
And it has been quite a ride for the people at the top. You look at individuals like Elon Musk, for example. I think the latest number for him was about $240 billion in his pocket.
Ah, yes, as Trump refers to him, the rising star Elon.
And how does that make most people feel when they consider that a lot of the decisions that are going to be made affecting us are going to be made by individuals who have absolutely no understanding of having to budget your household, and your household is, a house, not 15 houses and a yacht and a tower and maybe three emerald mines.
And a support yacht for your super yacht.
Right. And these are the people making the decisions. And it gets back to what I was talking about before, though, with the news media. It's owned by the billionaire class.
Right.
Whether it's Fox News or MSNBC, our favorite.
Or yes, we do love MSNBC. They were our nightly companions throughout the through that we used to kind of soothe our pre-election jitters, which, well, we all know how that turned out. But or even MSNBC or the Washington Post, as we know, is owned by Jeff Bezos. You know,
Who promised never to get involved in the newspaper's day-to-day business and then turned around and forbade them to endorse a candidate, as has been tradition for many, many years there. And another billionaire friend did the same at the LA Times,
right,
forbidding their editorial board from making an endorsement. The influence is from this class of people is being felt everywhere, and they're making themselves more and more known as they sort of take the mask off because there's no need to play the game anymore.
right. Donald Trump has something that we called, or something that was heard frequently throughout the election cycle, was permission structure, and I definitely think that one of the permission structures that Donald Trump has created is for the billionaires to kind of come out of hiding.
Yes, as we came out of the closet, they too are now coming out of the closet,
Yes,
and in
the,
designer jeans and black t-shirts.
their closets as big as our home.
But getting back to where we were a few moments ago, talking about the American economy, you have the glowing numbers. Yes, those are there, and it does represent the hard work of a lot of individuals put into their positions by President Biden and Vice President Harris as well. And they were good stewards of what has up to this point been the the economy that people wanted them to manage. So our GDP, for example, I believe Devin, you've got some numbers there.
Yes, so currently they are showing that our GDP from 2021 has increased 12.6%, which is an increase over the 2017 to 2020 presidency of Donald Trump, which showed an increase of only 5.7%, which was largely due to a negative year in 2020, which was a negative 2.3%, I think, which would have still brought his total under Biden's discounting that year at an 8%.
And of course, that 12.6% number is, eight, it represents approximately $8 trillion.
Which is pretty unfathomable to a lot of us.
Right. If you take all 330 million of us or so that live in the country,
The approximate.
yeah, you're looking at about 20, I think it was $24,000 or so per
Yeah,
person if you were to cut a check.
almost $24,500.
So that's a significant amount of money, and most of us are sitting here thinking, where is that money?
Right. That would be what, 48,000, $49,000 for our household. That
Right.
would make a huge difference
That
for
would,
us.
yeah, we would have been in much better shape if we had had that extra money. But as we all know, this money doesn't go to us.
No, we I guess we could call Elon
Yes,
or
Elon or
Jeff
Jeff or Bill or Warren
Warren.
or,
Yeah.
any number of folks out there. Maybe we can FaceTime Zuckerberg. But this money is going up. It's all going up to the top, more and more every year. It's something that when I worked for a major retailer, we, as a manager there, we were strongly encouraged to beat same store sales, which means make more on November 12th of 2024 than you did on November 12th of 2023.
Yes, and when I was a restaurant manager, that was something that it was a fastidious obsession that we were encouraged to. Well, no, we had to report it. Actually, we had to report it up, continue to report it up, and then justify why we didn't hit it if we didn't.
Yes, and those numbers were difficult to reach because they don't take into account the weather or whether or not there's a war.
Events in town,
Exactly,
less serious
local
than a war, but
local, you're right, local or regional happenings, or the fact that half your customer base is no longer showing up because they can't afford to eat out anymore.
or they can afford less groceries than they did before since you worked in a retailer.
Yeah, and it's like you look at this number, it must be more, it must be more, it must be more. Well, there has to be a ceiling to all this. And just when you think it's ridiculous beyond belief, then they throw AI into the mix. And you've got to meet these new artificial numbers that AI has come up with. Not only must you beat the numbers for the 12th of November 2023, but based on these other considerations, you should make at least this amount, an even higher number. And it starts to look a lot like the housing market, where houses are going up, 20% in value every year. Well, if houses go up 20% every year and they never stop going up, and our pay is going up maybe 2% a year, if it is at all, I think we start to see this picture here of what the future holds for us as workers and lower middle class in the United States. And that, maybe not quite to this extent of detail, but that feeling of hopelessness is, I believe, what gripped so many people.
Right. It kind of caused them to forget the previous 4 years under Donald Trump and look back with nostalgia on the feeling that they had at that time where they felt as though they were doing better.
It's not discounting our friends. We have friends who are Republican who voted for Donald Trump. It's not discounting their minds. They're not stupid.
No, not
You
at
know,
all.
they definitely feel this way. And we miss something along the way, with regards to COVID. I remember looking at the news and seeing them pan out over the international port of Los Angeles, and there were just dozens and dozens of those gigantic, massive container ships
Hmm.
that could not be processed, creating this new term none of us had ever heard before outside of really real economists, of supply chain
Right.
disruption. Supply chain, and prices started going up and
Right.
up. And of course, we have to buy these things. We need them for our homes, so we pay the price. And I believe Devin has a quote for us, when it comes to these prices increasing and then continuing to go up for months and months after that, more and more. Um,
Yes, the CEO of Amazon, Andrew Jassy, did say in a letter to his shareholders in 2023, which was then publicly released on April 11th in 2024, that the prices have increased because the consumers are willing to pay them, but there's a limit to how much they're willing to accept before seeking cheaper alternatives. And
And
I,
as we know, that limit is what's actually in my checking account.
right, and how much is my paycheck? Um,
It's always funny how when they talk, it's like we're making a choice. This has gotten a bit high. I think I'll look elsewhere.
right. I don't think I need to eat today. I can wait until tomorrow when I can find a cheaper
It's like, well,
alternative.
the human body can go 3 weeks without food,
You're
and
right.
and water is still affordable, so I only need to eat a couple times a month, really.
um, this supply chain does speak to one of the Biden numbers that probably one of the weakest of the economy numbers. Now he has done a good job at reining in inflation, but if you're just statistically looking at the numbers, when Biden took office in January of 2021, our inflation was 1.4%. In 2022, it jumped up to 7.5%, reaching its peak in June of 2022 at 9.1%. And again, that's when we started to see a lot of issues with supply chain, and also the supply chain issues created an increased demand, which then the corporations used to exploited really to raise raise prices. And then I don't think we've really seen a cap to that yet.
Even though it's slowed, it doesn't mean it's stopped.
Yes, it
Um,
did slow. Currently, our as of September, our current inflation rate is at 2.4%. So you can see it has come a long way since
back
2022.
down, back down to pretty much what it was during Trump's first term.
Right,
So, inflation happened, things got out of control, and under the Biden administration, things got back under control, but not in time.
right.
The damage had been done, and there's all this blame. Let's blame President Biden without thinking logically. First of all, if President Biden were profiting off this, we would all know. Um,
There would be signs, I'm sure.
yes, I'm thinking his really nice house in Delaware would suddenly become part of his collection of really nice houses, and we would certainly see some differences. But what vested interest did President Biden have if he's not getting any money in making life harder for the average American purposefully?
That he's worked almost his entire career to champion.
Right. What is the interest in that? Let's make everybody mad so they won't vote for me because I want to be in there again, but I don't think I need people to vote for me.
Right, not
Right.
unless you're, I mean, if you're Donald Trump, that seems to be the logic. But
Yeah. But I mean, and at the end of the day, it's one of those situations where you just have to kind of stop for a moment, think about things, look at it objectively, and yes, President Biden was doing all he could because he wanted another term. We all know that, regardless of how things turned out, he did want to continue to serve. So, of course, he worked on this. We see the evidence of it with the numbers back down. And, it wasn't highly advertised, but the Biden administration did instruct the Federal Trade Commission several months ago to begin an investigation into price gouging. And there were other instances where you saw the government or the administration, looking into this. You even saw Democrats in the Senate taking opportunities, like, for example, the Kroger acquisition of one of the larger chains, Albertsons, in the country to become an even larger chain of grocery stores, asking them, because it is a concern if you become even bigger, are you still going to, be fair to the American consumer, or are you going to take advantage of your size to be nasty?
if I'm remembering correctly, they had a pretty precocious, putting it mildly, response to that, didn't they?
Yes, the Kroger executive sitting there in the United States Senate um,
Chamber, right?
not in the chamber of the Senate, but in their briefing room or whatever it is, where they do their little trials, um, was not really a trial, but where they interview folks. People come in to speak to the Senate, Um, anyway, they're sitting there, and their response was, to the senator asking, are there instances where Kroger has unnecessarily raised prices? In other words, it wasn't because the price for them went up, they just raised it because they could. Did that happen? The Kroger executive's response was yes. The senator wanted to know, could you give us a couple of examples? And I'm paraphrasing, but the Kroger executive said, well, yes, milk and eggs. Most households don't need that. So,
Right, that's not a staple in everyone's refrigerator. Thank goodness it's something rare like saffron that no one ever uses.
exactly, or sultanas,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
but the point is, it's corporations that took advantage of an already bad situation with COVID and the supply chain bottlenecks and things like that resulting from the crisis. And they should be punished. There should be fines. There should be lots of things done, but none of it's being done.
Right. That was one thing that Kamala Harris spoke many times about during her campaign. Was one of her major promises that she would take on corporations to combat price gouging.
Right. And only at the end did she really get into discussing it at all. And I think that there is a fear among the ruling classes that if we agitate the working classes too much, that could be dangerous for us. We see it in every nation around the world, that has an economy like ours, a mainly capitalist economy. And I'm not saying let's play the international. I'm not not calling for the red flags or anything, but
We're
I'm
not
just
screaming "eat the rich." Yeah.
yes. But what I am saying, instead of eating the rich, how about we just make them pay their fair share and kind of rein in some of their outlandish behavior?
Right. And that kind of plays into the next statistic, which was unemployment, and that it did come down during the Biden administration. I think you have the numbers there.
Yeah, the unemployment rate fell from 6.3%, which is around 10 million workers at the beginning of the Biden administration, end of the first Trump administration, to its current rate of 4.1%, or 7 million workers. So that number did fall. And Americans do like to hear, we like to hear that little snippet on the radio or wherever we happen to hear it or see it, that the unemployment rate is down. Makes us all feel better.
For us, it's probably Rachel Maddow telling us.
But, we like to hear it. We like to see it, whether it's NPR, MSNBC, CBS, doesn't matter who it is. If we hear things are looking better in that one, we get that one. That's fewer of our friends standing in line waiting for a check. But again,
I think it comes back to the corporations in that aspect. Sure, 3 million people got jobs, but what do those jobs pay?
and that's a major sticking point for me because everyone wants to complain. We have to pay these workers, these leeches on our company, sucking all of our profits away. And when you look at a P&L statement as a manager in a retail,
Profits and loss for those of you who have not had the pleasure of looking at one.
right, and you have to make your cuts. The first and easiest place to do that is your hourly workers. You look at them first, even though they're the lifeblood of your business. You can't get anything done without them.
Right. They're the reason that you have a business.
Right. And it's, let's face it, you may have a great idea or a great product, but if there's no one to sell it for you, no one to talk about it to the public and talk it up for you, then you're not going to sell it. It's going to sit in a warehouse somewhere, and you're going to look really stupid. You know, that's. But I mean, it's the lack of interest in raising people's wages to a true living wage. Bernie Sanders recently eviscerated the Democratic Party.
Very recently.
The past few days, talking about how they missed the point. When's the last time the Democratic Party really stuck its head out for the working people in this country? And it has been a long time. I say this as a Democrat myself. I sometimes I don't really want to call myself a Democrat because I like the people more than they do.
Yeah. Nancy Pelosi was really, really, really happy with Bernie Sanders and his take on the Democrats being a little out of touch with.
And nothing says in touch like having a $240 million bank account and wearing an Armani pantsuit while you say, "Of course we're in touch."
Here's looking at you, Nancy.
And I don't, and it's not just to hate on Nancy. She's done a lot of really great things
Yeah, she has
for
done it.
social justice causes throughout the years, and nobody can raise money for the party like she can. She, if anyone knows money, it's her, but they don't seem to understand that. Take an example that I'm familiar with. I was a paralegal too for 8 years, and as a paralegal, the work you do is of great help. In the law office, you're getting that paperwork taken care of. You're meeting those dates. You're making it possible for the attorney to focus on the legal theories necessary to advance their case by taking care of all the practical matters associated with the case. Hand holding with the clients and filling out their documents and putting together interrogatories and summarizing depositions, and you're very busy, and some legal research there too to help out, and it's such an important position.
And the pretty much required to be very highly educated as well.
Well, I mean, in my case, you had to have a bachelor's degree, pre-law degree, and you had to have a post-baccalaureate certificate in paralegal studies to go with it. And you go into that office in 2020 or 2002 being paid between $12 and $15 an hour, and here we are in 2024, and paralegals are being advertised in the papers here for $12.50 an hour with no benefits. And in 21 years, 21, 22 years, there has been zero increase in pay.
Oh, the generosity of a lawyer.
I mean, I get it. You've got to find a way to balance, paying your workers more as prices increase so they don't fall behind, and making a profit for your business. But really, there's been no increase in starting pay in 22 years. And I mean, that, just to give a little bit of perspective, the apartment that I got when I moved to the big city I worked in for my first paralegal job was a 2 bedroom, 2 bath apartment that I shared with my cousin for, I believe it was $565 a month.
Wow.
And, and I don't mind telling you what city that was. I'm not there anymore. That was Nashville.
And you couldn't rent a
A broom closet for that now.
right. That I mean, actually,
And
we did live in a broom closet for about that amount,
right, yeah, we actually
but
did.
that was about 6 or 7 years ago. So I
Yeah,
imagine,
that was about 7 to 8 years ago, and we probably couldn't even afford that broom closet now, and
right?
especially if your wages haven't increased in 22 years, if everything has gone up, the price of a vehicle, the price to maintain that vehicle, your health insurance. We don't even talk about that. As we're talking about employment here. 15 years ago or so was kind of the beginning of employees having to contribute for their health insurance coverage.
That's right. They did used to cover that as a part of your benefits.
Yeah, that was just part of your job. In 2008, John McCain, part of his platform was to start taxing that as actual income. And as anyone will tell you, when you're making $12.50 to $15 an hour and you start talking about treating your 5,000 or so dollars a year in medical coverage as taxable income, you start getting nervous.
You betcha.
Yeah. But but I think that when you think about the fact that so much in the beginning we were told, well, it's just going to be $30 every 2 weeks, so $60 a month. So just $60 a month became, now we're paying almost $700 a month. It's
Right.
great coverage, don't get me wrong,
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic
but
coverage,
but that we have, but you know,
and we're thankful to have it. But
but what if we still had that, that old rule in place where that was just a benefit we didn't pay for? Then we'd have $700 a month to spend on whatever we need to, save for retirement, put in a 401k, make repairs at home, or buy meat
Yeah,
at the grocery store.
and that would drastically, yeah, $700 a month would drastically increase the capabilities of our household and would also reinvigorate the economy.
Yeah, that would be more spending, and that's always good for the economy since we still make up about, as consumers, not the billionaire class, but just us little workers, we're still 2/3 of the economy. And I would think that means something to the people in DC. But it doesn't seem to. And that's why when they tout these unemployment numbers at the end, they ring a bit hollow to the average person because yeah, we have these jobs, but now we need 3 or 4 jobs
I was going to say, yeah, most people, I mean, we've done it. We've both worked, 55 plus hours a week just to make ends meet
or more.
or more, and then ended up needing to pick up a second job, just to make sure that we had everything covered.
Yeah, and that's not like it used to be. Once upon a time, people made enough at 40 hours a week to take care of all the basic necessities. And on top of that, to go on a family vacation, every summer to have a nice Christmas for their kids and to put back for the kids' college fund. And that's absolutely, and that was on one income. That was one 40-hour a week income.
Right.
And then, in the 80s, it was two 40-hour a week incomes to do that. And here we are in 2024. You need two 40-hour and income, jobs plus a second job for each parent. And then there's the child care question.
Right.
And if you're not able to meet your expenses anymore, you just fall further and further behind. I mean, the math, as we say, the math doesn't math.
Yeah, the math
If
is not mathing
if
here.
Yeah, because if everything's gone up 8% on average, and you get a 1.5 or 2% raise, you're just falling further and further behind every year, and it does seem hopeless. And I think that if you take all these things into that in that context, it's no wonder so many people voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that people felt that, he was or would be an agent of change for the country as far as the economic policies are concerned. Again, we, being introspective, can definitely see how people might think that, but
But let's look at, he's elected the next day, the stock market, huge rally, huge, as he would say, huge.
huge, huge.
But it's not because yay, good times are here again for all of us. It's good times are here again for us at the tip top.
Yeah. How
Because
much did Elon Musk make? Was it like 200
he made 29 approximately $29 billion in 2 days.
in 2 days? Yeah.
Just for being rich. He didn't come up with some new plan for his company, something that no one's ever heard of, or a new product, or make it to Mars. Nothing happened except he sat there rich.
Right. He sat there in Mar-a-Lago in a family photo with all of Donald Trump's family. That's where he sat.
And this is the poison. This is the poisoned apple that we've all taken a big bite of collectively. We voted for Harris, but we're in this same boat with everyone who voted for Trump. So
Yeah.
this poisoned apple that it looks so great, and we in our nation bit it, but it's the billionaire class, and it's people like Donald Trump who have made this our reality. It is their legislation. It's the trickle down economics of the 80s with Reagan that got it really going. And, it's George W. Bush, and I still remember his speech to his contributors in 2004, I believe it was, wearing a tuxedo. I love this gathering. You've got, here are my friends, you got the haves and the have a lots. And, and then take us to now. And
we graduated through Mitt Romney, which, though he did not get elected, we do have the infamous line, "The corporations are people too, my friend."
yes, and then you have the situation now we're facing where Donald Trump's signature economic legislation was a tax cut for the corporations and the top 1%. And lo and behold, what is the first thing, according to Speaker Mike Johnson? What is the bill that they plan to put on the floor first? Because it is the most important piece of legislation and it must pass. And that is yet another tax cut for the top,
Of
taking
course.
their tax rate from 21% to 15. Because when you're making billions and billions in profit, of course you need some help.
Yeah, just a little, just a little handout for our friends at the top. But that does kind of present a nice segue to the next thing that we'll be tracking over the Trump presidency. And this is one that we do expect to see a lot of movement with. And that is our budget deficit.
Right. This is, you know, this is something that speaks to who Donald Trump is at his core as a businessman. We've all heard it from our friends who voted for Donald Trump. I want a businessman, a good solid businessman at the top.
Yeah,
Well,
a good solid one that's been bankrupt six
and it's like,
times,
and how do you go bankrupt? You spend more than you bring in, and
which is something that he was very good at doing when
quite
he
a
was,
drought. Yes,
yeah.
he has always been able to spend. He's quite good at spending, and especially when it's someone else's money. Just ask the people that went to his university or bought his steaks. And
Or his watches, or his sneakers,
like, okay,
or those collectible trains, or the Bible.
yeah, but I mean, it's selling them for 59.95 and it cost him $3. And that's great.
Where were those made?
But the bigger, oh yes, China.
China.
But the bigger point is what he's going to do to our national debt, because each year he is definitely going to spend more than he brings in. Because does he have a plan? I would say he does not even have a concept of a plan when it comes to deporting tens of millions of human beings from our country.
Which is atrocious. I mean, it's the thought of it alone is disgusting, and we did see how that went on a small scale in his first term, and it was devastating to many families.
Yeah, nothing like tearing children from their parents' arms. And in the case of the video that we have from that time, listening to the screams of children as they're torn from their parents' arms, that's a great image for America. But a great image for all of us, even those who were so happy to see this happen, is $88 billion for every million that we, return home. Whether they've ever even been at that home or not is not relevant. Whether they've ever even seen these countries is not relevant. But 88 billion for each million
And he
times 20.
yes, I was going to say he did have a rapidly increasing number throughout his campaign, and I think the final number that it is his goal, one might say, to deport is 20 million. And I'm terrible at math, but I think you could probably do that fairly quickly in your head.
Yeah, I mean, we just wind up with around between 15 and 17. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment here. You mentioned that, but we're looking at 1.5 and 1.7. I had to put my decimal back. Trillion dollars of the T.
Which again is
And that's
still
just and that's low
unfathomable
and
to
that's
me.
right and that's lowballing it at this point, because we haven't actually put it into practice. And as we know, with any endeavor, whether you're adding on to your house or deporting your neighbor, there are hidden costs.
Oh,
And that's not talking about, look at all of you know the businesses in our country, hospitality, agriculture, whether it be hotels or restaurants or corporate farms or just big family farms
and these, and yeah, and
who
we're
will
speaking. They're saying that it's illegal people that they're looking for. Not to mention these people have been here for a long time. They're doing jobs that are thankless and awful.
contributing. Last number I saw was approximately 97 billion in taxes and receiving no benefits for that money.
Zero benefits.
So we're going to lose that income. We're going to lose that work product, which most of us, when we go into a grocery store, we like it when our bell peppers are under $1.
That
Um,
hasn't been in a while, but yes,
when
closer to a dollar than not.
Right, but I mean, we like it when we see they're on sale or whatever. There will be no sales in produce. There will be no sales in the meat department either, because these illegals, as they're called, or undocumented, as it should be called, these individuals bring so much um, flexibility to our businesses in this country, and that flexibility will be gone, and you will have to pay very resentful American citizens a lot more per hour to harvest these crops and to raise these animals for the meat department and to work in our hotels. You know, we've worked in hotels, and
Yeah.
in hotels I've worked side by side with many undocumented people, and they work just as hard as anyone else, and in some
Sometimes
cases
harder.
harder,
Yeah,
and
because when they finish there, they go to the restaurant or another hotel or
exactly, they don't stop working just because they put in their 8 hours. It's usually they've put in their 18.
right. And these people are being exploited already, and then you add insult to injury, and they just came here for what America has always promised, which was a better life. And they're already being exploited because they are a vulnerable class of people, and we take the right or wrong of how they got here out of the equation. They got here, they're here, and they're doing work. And contrary to what Donald Trump would have you believe, they are actually, as Jonathan mentioned, paying in taxes. They're not costing. I'm sure that they do consume services and things that do cost the government money, but largely they are contributing to the American economy. So this will be, disastrous, and that's taking the human element out of it.
And it's not to mention the relationships between our country and the Central American nations and South American nations that Trump is going to not only insult, but according to him, violate their national sovereignty. He has talked about military action in Mexico with or without the consent of the government. That's usually called war.
Right.
And while I don't doubt the United States could take Mexico, how many nations is this going to include? And do we need a war with Mexico? I mean, really?
Right. They are our
You know,
neighbors and
he
biggest trading partners too.
yes, they
Don't
are.
forget.
They are our biggest trading partner, and that would disrupt the economy further. Not to mention the chilling effect it would have on our relations with our other allies. And we won't even get into how that's going to go tonight. But, all of this together is going to increase our debt,
Which
which Donald is quite good at. In his first term of office, our national debt went from about 19 trillion, just under 19 trillion oops, just under 19 trillion to 27.8 trillion. And for those doing the math there, that's a lot.
yeah, that
That's
was
about nine, almost, that's about $9 trillion in 4 years.
which was a roughly 47% increase.
And right, and you look at our current debt is up to about 34 trillion now, and we have to take into account things that drove up the debt. Some things were good and necessary, like the stimulus checks that helped people to continue to pay the bills through the COVID epidemic or pandemic.
And
Um,
then you also account to the foreign aid that we've been sending to the Ukraine and Israel. Regardless of your thoughts on that, uh, there has been aid that has been sent, which has caused the increase. And the percentage of increase, however, is under the increase in Donald Trump's term. I'm not positive about the number, but I'm showing that it's around roughly 29% of an increase in Joe Biden's term with the
so
8.9 or
so again
8.5
a
trillion.
better custodian than Trump.
Right.
With regards to that, we should be returning to the land of budget surpluses so that we can start paying this debt off. But that's nowhere on the horizon. And now with Trump entering into office, and just this one part of his plan, is going to increase our debt by around $2 trillion. And that's not talking about all the fallout. So already he's spending money. Oh, it's just 2 trillion. Yeah, that's just the future for
And
our children and our grandchildren.
that doesn't include that doesn't even account for the tax cuts that he wants to give the his friends at the top, nor does it account for the tariffs. But we
Yes.
won't get into that tonight. That's a whole nother can of worms that we
Yeah.
can't afford to open.
But just to kind of sort of start to bring it home for this evening. We look at the stock market last, and this is a traditional indicator that these particular markets that are usually summed up together, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, and the Nasdaq. Everyone follows these three.
Those are the big
Um,
three, yeah.
those who follow it, these are the three they follow.
Doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but we did decide to track it because, again,
Yeah, but I mean, it's the numbers have gone up significantly. We've seen an increase in the S&P 500 of 60.02%, and
since year open in 2021.
so that's since the beginning of President Biden's term, we've seen an increase of 45.54% in the Dow Jones.
And in the
And
NASDAQ composite, we've increased that by 51.73%
and
since year open.
and not to belabor, economics can be quite boring, but when you see these big numbers, 60, 45, 51, yeah, these are huge numbers for increases, of the traditional measures of a president's economic success. Before this election, that's pretty much all anyone focused on. And so, by the traditional measures, President Biden has been a highly successful president, and unfortunately has been rewarded by his successor, his chosen successor, being um, shot down, so to speak.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And yeah, and it's unfortunate that things turned out the way they did, because he was such a poor custodian of our economy before, and
Donald
of
Trump, I'm assuming you
yes, Donald Trump.
mean.
You know, he being Donald Trump, yes. But he was such a poor custodian of our national debt, of our economy, of anything during his first term, relative to President Biden and many other presidents. And we've returned him to office simply because, well, things were better in the good old days, because we've been through some hard times. And not discounting again, as I said before, yes, it's been hard. It's been hard for us.
Mm-hmm.
But there are larger issues at work, that we will be getting into in the coming days, like, for example, American democracy. You know, um, what, what, what value do you place on that? What dollar amount? It's inestimable. It's such a rarity. I believe it was Freedom Watch, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. But 1 out of every 5 people on this planet live in a free state. The other 4 out of 5 live under some sort of authoritarianism. So what we have is very rare.
Right.
And, so not to get too far off point, but that's a consideration that I think outweighs anything else we saw.
Yes, and in our future episodes, in addition to speaking on Donald Trump's promises that he made on the campaign, the promises that are made in the platform and in Agenda 47, we will also be speaking about the things that he says on a daily basis that draw that very fact into question of is Donald Trump going to protect the democracy of our country? Because as Kamala Harris pointed out several times in her campaign, this man did vow to be dictator on day one. But we'll be delving into all of that in future episodes. We'll also be tracking over his presidency, as we said, poverty rates and consumer price in index, as well as the trade balance, all of which have been fairly similar
And we
between
can
the
and we can
Trump and
promise,
Biden.
and we will promise you in our future episodes, we won't be quite so into the minutia of economics.
Right.
We're not going to be throwing numbers at you, and it's not going to be like the most boring thing in the world to talk about. we'll talk about them in a more broad sense,
And these are
and
things
only
that,
we'll only zero in on the things that really affect just regular people.
right. And these numbers that we're talking about tracking again over the course of 4 years. These are not numbers that make broad sweeping changes aside from the stock market. These are not numbers that make broad sweeping changes on a daily basis. So that's something that will take time to gather data on for those numerous sources that we gathered this data from. It will take time to gather that data to see how those changes have been made.
But just kind of as a wrap up, we're getting close to the end here. So kind of as a wrap up, what we've talked about tonight, that's kind of who we are, what we're about in this. We decided it's just important for there to be, just some regular people like us out here talking with you, sharing conversation, sharing this journey together, and sharing some truth. Because it just seems like it's so hard for people just to call a lie, and truth, truth.
Right.
We hear, what's the term that they like to use instead of lie? Misinformation.
Misinformation, yeah, that's been very big.
This is misinformation. No, folks, it's lies. Please call lies lies.
Joy Reid is not one to suffer a liar, and she will call out a lie as a lie. And a lot of the anchors on MSNBC have gravitated towards that. I think towards as the election got closer and
And
closer.
and more so than the other networks from what we could tell, because I understand the desire not to be too incendiary or to put yourself in a position where you could be sued for libel or slander or whatever, but a lie is a lie.
Right.
And the very nature of it means you're not going to get sued if you call someone a liar for lying.
Right.
And we're going to be covering, this subject matter frequently over the next 4 years, because the simple fact is the man we're about to call president is one of the worst liars I've ever seen.
Yeah. And
He not only is it because of he's prolific with his lies, but because he's so bad at it.
prolific and one might say compulsive. And yes, he is very bad at lying, because I think generally the object of a lie is to not get caught. Again, there I go.
Donald makes no effort
No.
to avoid being caught in his lies, and we're going to be going through that. Starting with our next episode tomorrow evening, we're going to talk about the first of his Agenda 47, and we're not going to make you listen to him. We'll watch
These
the video. You're free to. We'll tell you where to go to watch it.
for clarification, Agenda 47 was released, I think, started being released back in 2023 as a series of videos. I did not count them. There were several pages of videos. They did then condense that down into the Republican platform of 2024, which is titled, I did print it, 16 pages long. It's that includes the cover page and a dedication page, which was very odd to me. But the header is Republican platform 2024, make America great again.
This is where everyone has said, on the Republican side, we're not part of Project 2025. This is our agenda. This
Right.
Agenda 47. Okay, fine. So we're gonna study Agenda 47 for a bit with all of you. We'll go in depth each night with each segment of it to talk about how does it affect us. The changes he makes, Democrat, Republican, Independent, all of us alike. How is it going to affect our lives? And
Right.
what is it going to do to our country? So we're going to go through these individually, and hopefully,
We
as we go along, um, it will increase all of our understanding
right.
of where are we heading? Take some of the mystery around this second term away, and see it for what it is.
Right. And I think our goal with all of this is a you know, one of my main things when he was reelected was, again, he's had some very harsh rhetoric, and of course that a lot of that centered, as it did in his first term, around the media. And so looking forward, what is the landscape of media look of public media, the media outlets that
The
are
mainstream,
mainstream media
what's
outlets, yeah.
called, what's been called the mainstream media. What is that going to be like for us going forward? Because I have a feeling we're going to see some moderation
Right.
on those stations that are more left leaning. We're going to see increased bravado among
Okay.
those that are right leaning.
So
Newsmax, America One, Fox News. We're talking about you guys.
yeah, sure
As
are.
if you didn't have enough bravado, we expect to see more. And
But
uh,
that was one of the main reasons that we wanted to for wanting to get this started, was to have a clear documentation of the promises that he made, the things that he said, and then what actually happens and how it affects us all, because who knows what the future holds at this point. And I think that I think that at least in this case, looking forward is going to be very important for us all.
so with that, this concludes our first episode of the Freedom Report. Thank you so much for listening, and we will look forward to hearing from you as time goes by.
Indeed. Thank you again so much for joining us for this very first episode, and good night.